Moving to item 11, proposed water and wastewater rates for fiscal year 2021-2022. This will be presented by Ms. Diana Langley, our Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'm back before you again for the second time to discuss the water and wastewater utility rates. So the purpose of rates is to ensure adequate revenues in the water and wastewater enterprise funds to cover operation and maintenance, debt service coverage, and capital projects. For some background, in April of 2016, Council adopted the water and wastewater rate study, and then in June of 2016, Council adopted water and wastewater ordinances that provide for Council review of rates on an annual basis as part of the fiscal year budget review process, which occurred last Tuesday. And then Council retains the authority to set rates by resolution. I just want to note back in April of 2016, when Council adopted the water and wastewater rate study, it proposed adjustments to the city's rates through fiscal year 2021. However, because Council did not adopt rates that exceeded the amount approved through the Proposition 218 process, there's still some capacity to increase the rates. And so I'm before you tonight to present a recommendation for rate increases. So as I noted, even though the water and wastewater rate study is only contemplated through fiscal year 2021, since you adopted rates less than those approved, there's still the ability to increase rates beyond 2021. So in 2019, we completed the Water Master Plan, in which we evaluated improvements necessary to address our existing infrastructure as well as improvements necessary to provide for new development. Just to serve existing infrastructure, and there's a table here that shows the type of facility, the capital costs, and then it's in millions of dollars, and it's broken into 5-year timeframes. So you can see that in the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15, we're recommending funding for supply improvements. We also have low lift pump station, which is our intake structure, the water treatment plant, booster pump stations and tanks, which are the large tanks out in the distribution system, and then pipelines. We have over 200 miles of pipelines that we need to maintain, including pipelines that are about approximately 100 years old that date back to the 1920s, and that's in the older part of town. Those are 3-inch galvanized pipelines that are in need of repair. So when you look at this, in the first 1 to 5 years, you have a total of $36.4 million, 6 to 10 years, $27.1 million, 11 to 15 years, $22.6 million, and 16 to 20 years, $19 million. Now, there's no way that staff kids itself that the council is going to adopt rates that are going to raise those types of funds. And so we do have a realistic approach in terms of what we can do. So with that, I'm recommending proposed water rate increase of 5% each year for the next 3 years. And so on this table, you have the meter size, of which 1 inch is typically the size serving residential properties, the baseline usage that's allowed in this rate, the current rate, the 5% increase for fiscal year 21-22, 5% increase for fiscal year 22-23, 5% increase for 23-24. And you can see that even with those increases, we're still below the Prop 218 approved amount. So if council were to move forward with increasing these rates, here's the estimated fiscal impact. And so our anticipated revenues under current rates for fiscal year 21-22 would be about $16 million, and then would increase slightly from there. With the water rate increases of 5%, this is the anticipated increase in revenues, so about $735 per every 5%, and then it compounds. And so you get total revenues that go from $16.8 million up to $18.66 million. When you look at our operating expenses, that's about $8.6 million, increasing up to $9.3 million. And then we have existing debt service. So this is loans and bonds that we've sold in previous years to fund infrastructure. And so those total expenses range from $12.2 million up to $13 million. So the net revenues available under these proposed rate increases ranges from $4.5 million in fiscal year 21-22 up to $5.6 million in fiscal year 23-24. And if you recall, we've talked about this multiple times, but under our bond debt covenants, we have to maintain a debt coverage ratio of at least 1.2, and with these rate increases, we are well above that threshold. And when I say these net revenues available for reserves and projects, that's everything. That's all of these capital projects, going back to this table, all of the capital projects, the increase in our reserves, that's everything. So to give you some historical and proposed water rate information, this is based upon a 1-inch water service. Going back to October 2006, we were at $16.62. There was a period of time when we did not have a rate study in effect, and so it stayed stagnant at $17.36. In 2011, Council adopted a rate study in which we increased rates over the following 5 years. In 2016, again, Council adopted a new rate study in which we increased rates up through July 1st, 2018, and then rates have not been increased since then. So they've stayed stagnant at $35.84. And so with these proposed improvements, it would bump us up to $41.49 over the next 3 years. To give you a comparison, we have Live Oak here at the low end, Rockland here at the high end. That ranges from $25.38 all the way up to $114.92. Yuba City Current is the gold. The fiscal year 21-22 is this blue column. Here's 22-23, 23-24, and this is our Prop 218. So even with these rate increases, we're still significantly below these other agencies, and this table does not, or this chart does not take into account rate increases that those other agencies will be implementing over the next 3 years either. So with that, any questions related to water before I move on to wastewater?
Would you just do me the pleasure of just those that will have higher rates than the city of Yuba City, just if you would mention the names of those cities?
Sure. So I'm going to go all the way out to past fiscal year 23-24. So Gridley, Lodi, Sacramento, Chico, Roseville, Turlock, Redding, West Sacramento, Davis, Marysville, which is actually Cal Water, Woodland, Orville, and then Rockland. Any other questions before I move on to wastewater? Okay. So similarly, we completed the wastewater master plan in 2020. And so here you can see the facilities that were contemplated include pipelines, lift stations, wastewater treatment facility improvements, the outfall diffuser and pipeline. And then this table breaks the capital cost over the next 20 years. So in the first 1 to 5 years, it's approximately $90 million. 6 to 10 years, $61.2 million, and then 11 to 20 years, $32.4 million. So in this first section of 1 to 5 years, a huge cost is this outfall diffuser and pipeline. And I know I've talked about this multiple times before, but our current outfall diffuser, due to changes in the Feather River, is out of the river the majority of the year. And per our permit, we're required to have a certain cover of water over that pipe in order for us to discharge from that pipeline. So what that means is that we have to discharge to our ponds. Well, our ponds are reaching capacity, as well as their high maintenance. When we're discharging to the ponds, we have to go out and do testing on a regular basis and provide that to the state. We also have to go out and disc the ponds on a regular basis so that they'll continue to percolate. And so we are recommending that we replace this outfall diffuser and pipeline. And so the cost estimate, $35 million, is based upon a basically 30% design, of which there's a 50% contingency. So this is a really high level number that we're moving forward with, recognizing that we will be completing the design over the next approximately year, and we'd be going into construction in the 2023-2024 timeframe. So staff is recommending proposed wastewater rate increases of 8% in fiscal year 21-22, 8% in 22-23, and then 5.6% in 23-24. And so this table shows the sewer rate schedule based upon use. Wastewater is different than water in that wastewater is a flat fee for residential uses. So for instance, on the single family, the current rate is $52.96. That's regardless of the amount of water that they use, versus the commercial is based upon their actual water usage. So they have this flat rate, plus they get a volumetric charge on top of that. And you can see that at the end of fiscal year 23-24, we're pretty close to the Prop 218 amount. This next table shows the impacts to the industrial customers and the septage haulers. So again, same increases of 8%, 8%, and 5.6%. So the estimated fiscal impact, this one, you can see that our anticipated revenues under current rates is approximately $17 million. The anticipated revenues with these rate increases ranges from $1.29 million up to $3.8 million. And so our total revenues would go from about 18.3 up to almost 21 million. Operating expenses for wastewater are much higher than water, so range from about 12.5 million up to 13.3. And then again, we have existing debt service for loans and bonds that we are paying payments on an annual basis. So our total expenses range from about 16.2 up to 16.9. You can see on the wastewater side, even with these increases, the net revenues is still pretty minimal, ranging from 2.1 million up to 4 million. What's so important about this $4 million number is by the time we get to fiscal year 23-24, we need to sell bonds or get a low interest loan to pay for that outfall diffuser. The payment on a $35 million loan with a 30-year term at 4% interest is about $2 million a year. So that one project will wipe out about half of those net revenues. And again, the debt coverage ratio, the minimum threshold is 1.2. You can see that we're getting close, even with this 8% increase, and then it starts to slowly increase as we continue to increase the rates. So looking at historical for the single-family dwelling rate, July of 2005 is $23.88. Again, it increased, and then you have a period where it stayed stagnant. 2011 rate study increased the rates. 2016 rate study, again, increased the rates. July 1st, 2018 was the last rate increase, and then it's held for the last 2 years since then. And then with these proposed rate increases, again, it gets us close to that Prop 218 approved amount. So where wastewater stands in comparison to other agencies, you have Chico down here at the low end, Live Oak here at the high end. Yuba City today is right here about in the middle. Here's fiscal year 21-22, fiscal year 22-23, and then fiscal year 23-24. And so at the end of that fiscal year 23-24, you have Live Oak that's here higher. Again, this chart does not reflect the rate increases that the other agencies will be implementing during that 3-year time frame. Also, when you combine the rates, the water and wastewater rates, it would put us about in the middle of all of these agencies. So for some comparison, for a single family dwelling, for a current bill is $88.80. So with the water and sewer increases proposed, that bill would go to $94.83. So an increase of $6.03. Going all the way to fiscal year 23-24, the water bill would go up to $41.49, sewer $65.23 for a total bill of $106.72. So an increase from current would be $17.92. So the for an average single-family home, their bill would go from $88.80 up to that $106.72 in 3 years. Similarly, for a commercial account with a 2-inch water service and a C1 classification, which is considered a lower strength wastewater classification, their bill, current bill would be about $408.22. Under fiscal year 21-22, that would go to about $435.36, all the way up to $489.18 in fiscal year 23-24. So the next steps will be to bring resolutions to council on June 15th for adoption. The rates would then become effective July 1st of each of the years, so July 1st, 2021, 2022, and 2023. The rates would show up on the billing that's sent out at the end of July, and so customers would first see that rate increase in their late July billing, and it would apply to their June consumption since we're always billing 1 month in arrears. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Langley? No questions from us? All right, any comments from anyone in the audience?
Hi, sorry, my name's Heather Esselman. I live on 2020 Lincoln Road, and I wasn't quite sure what the presentation was going to be. I should have looked at the packet. Sorry about that. I I wanted to remind the community and the council that it's important to try to make those hard decisions on occasion. If you're not sure what could happen to a community in the area, you can look at the grand jury report from last year that showed about Live Oak and the fact that they weren't able to make those decisions, and now they're in hot water because they don't have enough money to be able to make those repairs that they need to have. So in the same instance here, even though she's being very generous as far as saying that we can go up to 5% or 8% so that it doesn't impact people that much, we definitely need more money than that. So I urge you to pass at least the 5% and the 8% for, and this does impact me because I'm actually, even though we're very close to the county border, we are within the city and I have sewer. So I'm more than willing to prepared to pay the extra 8% to make sure that we can see that everything that needs to get implemented is not waited on, but is implemented as soon as possible. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I wonder if it was factored in that, because I didn't see it in your presentation, that we're going to be, everybody's going to be pushed to reduce their water consumption. And then also a lot of, it didn't reflect the amount of usage that people, this is just your baseline bottom fee, right? It doesn't, because everybody in Yuba City pays for the amount of use. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. So for water, it is based upon actual usage. However, going back to that table that showed the baseline allocation that's allowed, as long as you don't exceed that baseline allocation, that is your rate for the water bill. And so 15 HCF, 1 HCF is 748 gallons. So 15 HCF for most residential customers would serve them at least 8 months out of the year for the most part. It allows for your indoor usage and then some outdoor irrigation. Once you get past that baseline allocation, then you pay a flow rate per excess HCF. And so that would be $1.90 per HCF. And so that would cover your water. Again, for sewer, the residential is a flat rate. However, non-residential is based upon actual water usage. And going back to the conversation about people using less water, there's two different aspects to that. There's one of the discussion related to a drought. As of right now, there's no mandate from the state in terms of conservation requirements. The Regional Water Authority has recommended a voluntary 10% reduction. You know, as I mentioned before, going back to the previous drought, our customers continued to reduce their usage compared to 2013 levels, and so we've seen an ongoing reduction in water consumption. Separate from that is requirements from the state in the future to really limit the amount of water usage, basically a budget for the community. There's still a lot of work going into developing that budget, and for new residential, there are recommendations for the maximum allowed water, or trying to get to a max per capita usage for particularly indoor, and then also some for outdoor as well. So two very different paths that will potentially reduce water. But when it comes to our existing infrastructure and our existing rates, that's to serve the existing customers. For new development, like I said, there's a different estimate to build the infrastructure to serve that new development.
Other questions from the audience? Anybody online?
No public comment.
Okay. We'll bring this item back to the council.
Through the mayor, we discussed this, well, the presentation was given to us last week, I believe, and so the information is not new. So it seems, I'm glad that you consider this a need for our community, so I really appreciate your input on that. I think as a community, we've, held steady for those 3 years to try to help our community in the transition. But at this point, we have some major needs with our wastewater and water. In particular, serving on multiple regional water boards. The drought will affect us. Will that affect our bottom dollar in this change? We don't know until when those things are brought forward to us as customers pay and their own consumption of use of our services. So that's unclear, Mr. Burns, at this point. But I have nothing else to say at this moment. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Through the mayor. Ms. Langley, thank you for bringing this to us. Again, this is the third time we've seen it. And from everything I can see, the best way I can explain it is we're trying to put a Band-Aid on something that needs a tourniquet, because this doesn't go back 2 years. It doesn't go back 8 years. This goes back, as you said, the original pipes under downtown are about 100 years old. This has been deferment of maintenance has been kicked down the road for 100 years. So, and trust me, I know you guys are doing the best job that you guys can. So by no means did I mean that towards you and your team. You guys are doing a great job. But the question I have is, what is the end in summation of this game? Okay, looking as in, how are we going to pay for this? Because we're looking at, to use a word I heard earlier, de minimis returns, you know, $2, $3, $4 million, and we see in 1 to 5 years we need basically $100 million between the two. And then if we go out and do bonds, that just increases our debt service. This is just kind of a spiraling ball that just continues to grow on us. And by no means do I want us to turn into a Flint, Michigan, because, you know, they kept kicking theirs down the line. But where do we go? I mean, the governor has put out things for water programs, and how much of that, you know, can we possibly get? I know you're looking at all options, and I know it's unfair, but I'm kind of asking, what's the crystal ball tell us for the next 20 years other than your retirement before then?
Way before then.
You know, how are we going to do this? Because I'm looking at $200–300 million that's going to be needed over 20 years. And there are de minimis growth coming over this. So what is our long-range funding mechanism for this?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, this is not a question just for Yuba City. This is across the entire United States, because you've seen a lack of investment in infrastructure. And so there's a lot of discussions at the state level, at the federal level. And we always hear about programs coming across. A lot of times there's a lot of strings attached to those programs. However, we have been very successful in getting a lot of grants in the past. And that's something that we will continue to track. One of the things, the discussions that I'm hearing a lot about lately is increasing funds available to SRF loans, so state revolving fund loans. Those have low interest rates. And so we've also been successful in getting principal forgiveness loans through SRF. However, there's also always a match from the city, typically 50%. And so that's why you know, we see there's a huge price tag associated with this. We will continue to watch. You know, we do have a grant consultant that helps us. We also, as part of the RWA and other agencies, we see the grant programs that come across. I will say a lot of those programs seem to be focused on water reduction, water conservation, and what you can do to maximize the water that you have, not necessarily related to replacement of pipeline unless you can tie it to reducing your leaks, which we can to some extent. And so, you know, I wish I did have a crystal ball or the magic answer for this, but I don't. And so, you know, these are the rates that we can increase that are still within the Prop 218 amount. Within the next year, I will be issuing a request for proposals to get a consultant on board to evaluate the rates so that we do that next rate study, as well as reevaluate our connection fees, which is a separate topic that's similar and related to water and wastewater. And, you know, it's doing maintaining the system to the best ability that we can, trying to spend the dollars in the most efficient and effective way that we can, and then also pursue grant opportunities and low interest loans to the extent that we can. But like I said, going back to those tables that showed the dollar amount for the capital improvements, we recognize that we're not going to be able to get that amount of funds together, nor are many other agencies in California or the United States. And so, again, it's a nationwide infrastructure issue, not just Yuba City.
And that leads to the second part. It's amazing. You put water and sewer rates on an agenda, and if you're set on this council, your phone starts going off because it affects a lot of people. From my time on the RWA, found out all kinds of things that our hands get so tied because of the governor and the state legislature with, you know, people that can't pay their water bills, but then you can't go and do certain things because it's not allowed, but yet we're still, you know, providing service. So what have we thought? Have we looked at any of the ARP money? Have we looked at any of the governor's funding for water resources? How, if people can't, you know, they're on fixed income, that are having a hard time as it is. I'm not talking about the people that just don't pay their water bill, but the people that honestly have a need and they're struggling with $88 and now it's going to go to $90 and then it's going to go to $106. What do we have as far as assistance and funding that can possibly help them in the years to come? Because I equate this back to part of what we looked at with development impact fees. You know, they were so high, we were getting 100% of zero, and we made that adjustment. Now we got growth going. So what's going to be there, or is it just going to be more on collectibles that are on our AR for utilities? So what's our safety net for those people?
Yeah, so right now we can't shut off customers for non-payment. However, finance is going to be sending letters out to customers that have not paid regarding placing liens against their property so that they pay the bills. Separate from that, there is a program through the state right now where renters can request assistance with their utility bills. And so I believe we have a link on our website. And I think it's being, you can get assistance through the Salvation Army to help with that application. So there's that program that's through the state. If council wanted to set aside either, you know, part of the ARP funds to set aside a city-funded program to assist with utility bills, council could do that. You would also have the ability, let's say that COVID's not part of the picture, you know, as part of the annual review of the CDBG program, I believe that you can set aside funds for assistance for people that qualify to assist them with their utility bills. And, or you always have the option of putting general fund money out there. There are programs right now to help renters with their utility bills. I haven't seen something related to landlords assisting their renters with utility bills. And so there are options, because we do hear a lot about people on fixed income or people that are in tough times that can't pay those bills.
Thank you. Just my personal opinion, you know, where I've been the last 2 years, I heard it when I was coming into office, everything was too high. I see the need, but I go back to just my gut. Can our residents afford it? It's not that we don't need it, but can they afford it? And that's a big part of what is at my gut. You guys do a great job, and I realize that we inherited a huge problem. But that's just my thoughts. I'm wondering how people are going to pay and what funding may come down that might help offset this in the future. And both of those, from everything I learned on the RWA and been around, is two completely unknown variables because our hands are tied. So, thank you.
Through the mayor.
Yep.
Thank you once again, Mrs. Langley, for a very thorough presentation. You're absolutely correct, though. This is part of a larger conversation about infrastructure. It's a big one. And I think we're doing the right thing by being proactive in an investment for our future. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last but not least, right? Well, first and foremost, I think I want to acknowledge the work of the folks that are in sewer and water. Having spent some time with them, I know they're doing a lot of work, innovative stuff on their own. That's saving us quite a bit of money when it comes to repairs. And so to that, that kind of goes back into my fiscal conservativeness, if you will, in as much as we're trying to do as much as we can with what we have. And this is one of those items that's never easy to deal with as far as rates. Colleagues have mentioned, you know, the ability to pay. I look at water and sewer provision as an essential service. No disrespect to fire, police, or anything else. I find it in the same thing. That's what cities were established to do. If we can't, if we cannot, provide water or cannot, lack of a better term, flush the toilet, then I think we've failed at one of our primary missions. I think that the voters approved a rate back in 2000, or excuse me, when was it, Diana?
2016.
2016, in the 218. We have been conservative as a city council for the 2 years I've been on the council and not raising rates. And I think that, unfortunately, at this particular point in time, if we're going to keep the system operating, as our speaker earlier mentioned, I think we're going to have to step up and raise the rates. I don't see any other way to get by. I'm encouraged by the fact that our Public Works Department is probably, if not the best one, certainly in the top percentage in acquiring grants. I am continually interested in what these ARP funds are going to bring, and look forward to hearing that. I think we've spent that money about 10 times already, so we got to be careful there. But hopefully we can spend some money here. And if there are programs, and I think we were aware on the CDBG, there's some funding things that we can do for those who are struggling to pay the bills. So I stand in support of the rate increases. And I don't do that easily. And I would also mention, this isn't just a 15-minute presentation tonight. This has been a journey that our Public Works Director has led us through. So this is something that's really multi-year. It's not something that all of a sudden popped up. It's just, now's the time. And I wish it was different, but I do believe it is time. So, action.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't look up that way.
For clarification for the public, on the issue of people that are not able to pay their bills, I kind of like to know, and I think the public deserves to know, how big of an issue that is. And then also clarification, because you stated that on new development that there was going to be some kind of a cap put on water usage for new development, and can you expound on that for the public?
Sure. So in terms of how much, I would have to ask Mr. Morrison if he recalls the dollar amount in terms of, I know it was close to $400,000, just under $400,000 in terms of outstanding bills that will, those customers will receive letters soon to let them know that they have a time frame to pay those bills, or they can choose to participate in a hearing to explain why they can't pay the bills. And if they can't, then their properties will be liened so that they... For 1 year? That is for 1 year, yes. Yes. So in regard to the other comment related to the cap for new development, it's not a hard cap where if you're over the 55 gallons per capita per day, we shut the water off. But through the design, as we've all seen, low flow toilets, low flow sinks, the changes to the landscaping requirements, the goal is to put those types of measures in place so that it naturally results in a lower per capita usage per day. And so newer development is expected to have a lower per capita usage than existing development, just because of the measures that are put in place to minimize water usage.
Courtney.
Sorry about that. I just figured I might as well say something. I was just wondering, is there any other alternative where we could possibly reallocate money from the budget to pay instead of increasing the rate for citizens? You know, am I crazy, or is all the money coming from people who live in Yuba City? And I mean, how many people have been out of work are already on government assistance? I don't think we need one more program to pay for a bill that people can't pay for. Why don't we just, you know, move some money around a little bit to pay for infrastructure if we need so? I mean, I think the majority of people in government positions get paid upwards of 80 to 100 grand a year. You know, I just don't see money being allocated properly to mitigate issues such as this. And so I just really see that being really tragic for the people in our community. I mean, it upsets me, and I get paid an okay wage, you know? And so I think there's a lot of people who are going to need these government assistance programs, even just to pay this little increase or get a lien on their house. I mean, these are like fighting words. You know, if there were more people listening to this, is there just nothing else we can do?
I'll take it.
Okay.
So water and sewer are basically a separate, they're called enterprise funds. In essence, they pay for their own, which is different than the general fund, which is police and fire and all the other stuff. Commingling those funds, there's a bit of that goes on through different people that are working in support of that. But in essence, these programs, they're supposed to pay their own way. So when we talk about getting grants and we talk about getting programs from the state, that's how we try to supplement that. I think Ms. Langley did mention we could take some general fund money and we could do an innovative program to help with rates. But I think if you pay attention to the next budget presentation, you'll find that our budget is pretty thin as it is, just providing those essential services. That's not going to make everybody happy, but I can assure you, as one who spent a lot of time on the ad hoc committee, along with others and with my colleagues, is we don't feel like we have a fluff budget by any means. We are balanced this year, and you'll see that in a little bit. But the long answer to your question is, yeah, we potentially could move some money around, but in reality, an enterprise fund such as water and sewer is supposed to pay its own way, and this is what it's trying to do by the rate increase.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Online?
No public comment.
Okay. Back to the council for action. Any other last questions for Ms. Langley? All right.
So are you wanting us to move for bringing back this item for the June 15th meeting?
Yeah.
That you're requesting? Okay, so I move that we bring the rate increases back to council on June 15, 2020 for further consideration and possible adoption.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilperson Espandola, second by Councilperson Kirchner on items A and B under proposed water and wastewater rates for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 4-4. Councilman Shaw or Vice Mayor Shaw has voted no.